Welcome to the Discovery Doc podcast, where we advocate for optimal wellness and reducing everyday toxic loads, no matter where life takes you. I'm Dr. CeCe, doctor in nursing practice, self-proclaimed toxin tamer, and a crunchy mama.
I'm Anna Kate, a medical mystery overachiever and your discovery liaison. Join us on this exciting journey as we explore the world of holistic health, cutting-edge research, and practical solutions for a healthier life. Together, we'll navigate through the complexities of wellness, sharing valuable insights and expert advice.
Tune in to the Discovery Doc podcast. Get ready to be inspired, empowered, and discover a whole new way of looking at your health.
Well, welcome back to the Discovery Doc podcast. I'm here with your host,
Dr. CeCe, functional medicine nurse practitioner, self-proclaimed toxin tamer, and crunchy mama of how many? 4 at this point, probably. He will be here.
He will be here.
He will absolutely be here. Maybe he'll be here like next week. I don't know. Hopefully this dude will come early. But and my co-host.
I'm Anna Kate, your medical mystery overachiever and discovery liaison, and we have another special guest with us. All of your friends are hot.
We just have some pretty women on.
Yeah, just putting that out there.
Yes. Well, today we have. I'm so excited about this conversation because I'll tell y'all how I met Cortney. But we have Cortney Campbell on Instagram. She is at Anti-Cancer Mom. She runs just a big old. I don't even know what to call it. What do you call it? Like community that is really hyper focused on healthy living, and she is a 15-year holistic cancer survivor, and so. I love this because how I met Cortney was I was the pediatrician for one of her kiddos. Yeah, and she had her at home, and I came, and the midwife who was attending the birth is actually now my midwife, and that's how we met.
No, I didn't know that.
Yes.
That's so great.
Yes, absolutely. And then we found out that our kids go to gymnastics together.
We found out actually, CeCe, we found out that like the day before I went into labor, which was like 2 days before I met you at our house, we actually chatted in the lobby.
Oh,
we didn't even know it. We had this whole conversation and I was like, oh wait, I talked to you the other day because, it was out of environment. We didn't, it's amazing how the memory doesn't stick things. But once I met you at home, I said, I talked to you. I had no idea you were
at gymnastics.
You do what you do. Yeah.
Neither. I just knew this was a pregnant lady.
Yeah. You're sometimes hard to remember, but impossible to forget.
Aw, thanks.
Aww.
Well, Cortney, we are so excited to have you. There's so much that we can dive into your history. And what I kind of want to start with is, if you don't mind going into this, I think it just gives you so much just value to our community, is can you start us through not just where your cancer journey started, but maybe even before that, like looking back on your life prior to being diagnosed with cancer, what was going on? What were some things that you look back on that stick out to you? And then talk us through a little bit of the beginning stages of that cancer journey as well.
Yeah, this is great to talk about. I don't usually go that far back in a conversation about this. So I had a really healthy, I would say a healthy childhood. No like big T trauma, is that, you hear tossed around those kind of phrases. But, just some, I would say throughout my young adulthood, high school, college, some decisions that were perhaps a little bit on the shameful side, I guess you could say that. Grew up, and as far as like diet and things like that, I grew up eating like a standard 80s, 90s standard Cheez-Its, processed food. My mom would make dinner maybe once or twice a week that was like maybe a real vegetable, like mashed potatoes. But other than that, it was like canned corn, canned green beans, fish sticks, those kind of things. Diet Coke, Kool-Aid, Captain Crunch, those kind of, that's how I grew up. Like probably most people who grew up in that time period that are listening. And I'm just trying to like kind of cover those like emotional bases, like the dietary bases. And then moving into college, I graduated, became a teacher, and then ended up moving to Atlanta after college. I met my husband in college, but we didn't date. Kind of got married afterward, started dating afterwards. Really, as far as like the spiritual aspect, I became a Christian when I was 24. And I was baptized in the ocean, just like my hippie.
Oh,
I was kind of like in
amazing.
that hippie self. It was like the perfect thing for me. Um, and that was like probably the biggest like shift in my life. Like at that time, like the biggest shift was um, in the direction of like I was living for my creator who loves me. And yeah, and that was, yeah, a big part
Amazing.
of, where God brought me in as far as that path, on my path, my life path.
Yeah.
And that was through my husband. My husband was the person who told me, like, he was the person who told me about Jesus, and in a way that I was open to and made sense to me, and I didn't want to push away
I'm
because,
too pregnant
most
for
times,
this. I'm gonna cry.
ah,
I'm too pregnant for this.
yeah, and that's of
Amazing.
course that's like a loaded story, and I didn't think I would even go down this path.
Mm.
But a little,
But it's so
yeah, and
imperative to your life.
it is because it's every stressor that comes into your life when you're not alone in it. It's like it makes the world of
Mm.
difference. I'm not handling this on my own. God, you have a reason for this. Whether you don't take it away right away, it's a sanctification for me. It's going to change me. It's going to make my life um, just better in the long run, and it's for you. Like I'm doing this with you, but you're doing it for me at the same time, even the negative things. So that kind
Mhm.
of goes, it's going to lead up to the cancer diagnosis and how that, seemed like the worst thing that could happen to you at the time, but ended up being a blessing and a silver, and
Mm.
had tons of silver lining, later on. But yeah, so I moved to Atlanta. My husband and I got married about a year after I moved here. And 3 months later, I found out I was sitting at my desk at work, and I found a huge mass in my armpit
Mm.
that felt, I mean, I guess it felt like it appeared overnight. It was about the size of an egg once they took it out. And it
Wow.
was like, so they didn't even put me under to get it out because they didn't think it was as big as it was. It ended up being about an egg, like a small egg. Um, and it was underneath like my rib cage, and he had to keep injecting like the
Oh,
whatever the numbing agent is because
yeah.
it was like so deep, and they didn't think it was. I felt it like this.
Ah,
Anyway, I won't go there, but
poor thing.
um yeah, and I had also another mass in my neck. So armpit and neck, that's all I knew. We got all of the pathology done. It took about 3 weeks from the point of like sending it to Emory and then sending it to, or so it was at Piedmont Hospital here in Atlanta, then Emory. They couldn't figure out what it was.
Mm.
They thought it was an aggressive T cell lymphoma, but here we were like 1 week went by, 2 week went by. We didn't know. They're like, we can't treat it until we know what it is. And then a third week went by, and we knew it was cancer because the surgeon, when he took it out, he's like, he looked at me and he went, this is looking rough. Like it's going to
Mm.
be cancer. So we kind of knew something. We were just hopeful it wasn't. And then 3 weeks went by before we finally got the official pathology after they sent it to UNC Chapel Hill. And like there was a lymphoma specialist there named Peter Banks. And he diagnosed it as nodular lymphocyte predominant Hodgkin's lymphoma. The PET scan I had a week before that showed no involvement in the extremities that would have classified it as stage 3 or 4, but it was in my rib cage above my spleen. So it was classified as stage 2. Very small amounts in the rib cage. It said residual amounts of like lighting up on the PET scan in my
Mhm.
rib cage. So I had it in enough places to where it was stage 2. And we had removed the large mass in my armpit. I still had the piece in my neck, which was about a walnut size.
Mm.
And then of course they're like, okay, this is our toolbox. We have this chemo, and we have this radiation, and we have this immunotherapy, and this is what. And it's a cancer that's not seen very often, and in the lower stages they do like more of a watch and wait approach, but at stage 2, that's when they do want to treat it.
Mhm.
And so yeah, I didn't we kind of left there. They were like, this is the chemo room, and this is the wig shop. And they're showing you
Mm.
all these, they're just giving you the whole rundown. Oh, here's your card for your fertility treatment, because we're probably going to shut your ovaries down with this drug. They're going through all these drugs that they're going to give you. And the whole time, like, you're just in a glaze, especially I was
Mhm.
20. How old was I now? 20, I was 25, 26. See, I haven't told the story in a minute. Um, and yeah, I had just gotten married, and all I wanted, if you asked me anything in the world that I wanted to do with my life, yes, I was a teacher, but what did I wanted to be more than anything was a mom. That's all I ever saw myself. Like, in order to complete my life would be whole, is if I could, have children. And so that was a huge, like, that was where the blow was. It wasn't the cancer, it was the infertility. I was like, I remember thinking, my body's perfectly functioning right now.
Yeah.
We worked out. We were trying to eat a little better at that point. At 20, 25, we got married. We got like a George Foreman grill. Like, we're going to grill some
Fancy.
vegetables. We're going to maybe chop some vegetables and saute them on I'd never done these things. I had lived, really either going out to dinner or making microwave dinners and a Diet Coke at home. That's how I ate before all this diagnosis happened. And and so yeah, we were getting all that information, and it was the tour through the chemo room where my husband had he said it was almost like an audible impression that came out of nowhere, and it said, "This is not for you."
So the Holy Spirit.
The Holy Spirit, exactly. So, I've never had that happen in my life. I don't know if anybody listening to this has had like an audio, an actual audio, like a voice you can hear.
Mhm.
um, he said it was like just came in through one ear and out, but it's like, I don't know if I heard it or if it was, it was one of those things where God's always a little mysterious when he tells you to do something.
Yeah.
And all he says, this is not for you. I love that he didn't say chemo is bad or the pharmaceutical industry is corrupt and evil or whatever. It wasn't those human thoughts. It was, this is not for you. It may be for other people, but this is not your path. Anyway, so moving forward, he told me at some point, we really don't remember, at some point he told me, and I was very hostile toward it because I was like, my family had a history of cancer. My mom's identical twin sister had Hodgkin's
Mm.
when she was 14, and she went through clinical trials at Johns Hopkins, and they had all this like new treatment that they were trying on all these sweet, precious, mostly girls, teenage girls that were going through these clinical trials, and not everybody made it, but my aunt did. She had cobalt radiation.
Mm.
We believe it was probably ABVD, like the typical chemo that they give for Hodgkin's. We don't know. We don't have any of her records or anything, but from what they learned from what worked for her, they kind of moved that forward to what treatment is pretty standard for Hodgkin's even today. So that was a really big trial that she was part of. The cobalt radiation completely wrecked her, like her chest cavity. As she got older, she dealt with, she had to get a pacemaker, like her heart was affected. We just don't know to what degree her treatment affected her. This is my mom's twin sister I'm talking about. But all of that we kind of gathered with us as we were moving forward. We knew that the treatment wasn't going to just be like, let's get treated, and then we're going to move on with our life. Like there's effects, there's negative effects that happen. And so I was thinking, what kind of got me on board with what Kevin started going down the rabbit hole of clinical trials first. We learned that you can't just get a clinical trial. You have to usually exhaust all conventional options before you're eligible for a clinical trial. And we're like, okay, we did not feel at peace. I was really leaning on him because it was kind of his idea. We got a lot of hostility from my family, especially my mom, who was kind of like, you need to treat this cancer. Like, you're going to die. A lot of people were like, what are you doing? And so eventually that naturally led us down the alternative treatment route. We started, the internet and the holistic cancer community in 2008 was not like it is today. There was a couple of books that had been written, like, I won't name them all. Maybe we can list them in the notes, but, and we started ordering books. We started looking at websites. A lot of those aren't even around anymore because the people that wrote them aren't doing that anymore, or they've evolved into another kind of business or whatever. Or they're, passed away. It's 15 years ago. But everything that he was bringing home, I was just like, I can't, what, this is so unfamiliar. This is not
Mm.
proven. I had a lot of that pushback. The oncologist, we brought a lot of this to him. You can imagine how that went.
Yep.
He was actually very polite. He was more of like, this is not what I went to school for. Like, this is a whole, he's like, I don't deal in this. This is not something that most people decide. He was like polite about it. And we were like, all right. But we knew that there was just such a tension. I kept hitting that wall. Like, if I'm fine right now, if I do this treatment, they told us, we asked, like with the infertility, that's why they suggested I freeze my eggs or get embryos frozen, which is also like an ethical thing. You're having to
Mhm.
make these decisions. Like, is this ethically something we want to pursue 3 months into marriage, or what do we do? And there's so much prayer that went into it. But the Kevin getting a very, very clear answer. He's right over there working with his noise cancel headphones. I'm pointing he he was he was yeah, just unsure. And we ended up, I got this book by Bill Henderson called Cancer Free: Your Guide to Gentle Non-Toxic Healing. Bill passed probably 5 years ago. He was 80 something years old. But his research and his just practical nature, that he wrote out a protocol in his book, I felt like I can do this.
Yeah.
And I'll go over it in a second. But and I loved the way he wrote. He was very comforting, very practical, nothing too emotional. He provided a ton of stories of people who had done it and who had
Mhm.
healed. And so I was like armed with all of those things. That's one thing that's kind of one of my pillars when I talk to people is arm yourself with stories of people who have done it. There's tons of stories on the internet now, and just remember, put them, like, store them in your heart. Like, these people did it and I can do it too, as far as, when you're choosing a different path to healing. So anyway, we told our oncologist goodbye. Didn't call him back. Told him we were seeking a second opinion, and we did seek a second opinion, but we didn't wait to do anything. Once I read that book from Bill Henderson, I also felt like I can give this 3 months. I can do this protocol, this natural dietary change and supplements and herbal remedies and detoxification methods. Like, I can do this for 3 months and just go hardcore.
Mhm.
Um, and we added a lot to it as we researched. We didn't just do what was in his book, but added other things as well. All of that's on my blog. If people want to check it out, anticancermom.com is my blog. And I've been writing it since 2011. So 13 years now this
Wow.
month, actually. I started what's today, January 11th or 12th?
Well,
12th.
I think the first blog post was January 11th, 2011.
Oh,
So yeah,
amazing.
13.
congratulations.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, I know. I don't even sometimes think the 10-year anniversary went by. I didn't even know it till like 3 months later, because I'm kind of hit or miss with, I have well, I won't give away how many kids I have now, but uh,
More than
I'll say
one.
that till that point. But yeah, so the infertility was my primary driver. Went hardcore with the dietary changes. I'll just give you a quick overview. Of course, like, just like a super high plant-based diet. I really struggled with the plants, with the salads. I never ate salad in my life, unless it was like a ranch salad with, a Thousand Island ranch
And all the
with like croutons
cheese.
and cheese. Like, even if pick off everything. I was such a picky eater. And I still am. That doesn't go away, but I'm just like, I enjoy more foods, but I'm still picky about some things. But um yeah, and so high plant-based diet. I mean, talking weird things. I never even heard of half of these vegetables. Avocado, never really, nope, no, didn't know about it. Kale and collards and Brussels and broccoli sprouts, and like all these things I was learning. And of course, where do you go? You go to Whole Foods, because they have all that stuff there. But I come home and I was like, what do I do with this? How do I eat it? And so one day I was just crying, and I was losing all this weight, like over maybe the course of the first 2 weeks that I started my diet. And I just threw it. My husband Kevin, had bought me a Vitamix for my 26th birthday, which was just a month before my diagnosis in August. We got married in June. 26th birthday in August, and then diagnosed in late September. And so I had no plans for this Vitamix, except for to make some milkshakes maybe, or like a workout smoothie with like some of the, pre-mix and the whey protein or whatever. Like, I didn't know I'd be doing this. But I put all those greens and vegetables, and I put them in that blender. and I put some water in it, and I would drink my salad because I couldn't take the texture. I couldn't take the taste.
I'm sorry, sounds
And I
nasty.
pinch my nose and I drink it. Well, eventually I got a little better. That was in November. I started my holistic protocol in November, on the day Barack Obama was elected. It was November 4th. And the other element to the diet was what's called the Budwig mixture, and it's cottage cheese, organic cottage cheese, like 2%, or sometimes 1.5%, and 6 tablespoons of flaxseed oil, and I'd blend them with an immersion blender. And at the time, I didn't know, like, put some stevia in it or whatever, and I just would pinch my nose and eat it and gag. Like, it was so disgusting. So, like, basically everything I was eating, I was just like, I'm just doing this to heal. I'm doing it to heal. I, like, needed God's strength
Yes.
every second of every day, because I was like, I knew I was on the right path, but I just wanted to hit the easy button, you know? And at times, I admit, I was like, it'd be so much easier to do chemo right now. I just go in, they hook me up. You know, I know what I'm doing is like following the rules. I had a lot of the tension. I'm a rule follower. I don't like going against like the status quo. I mean, even now with like homeschooling, like we homeschool, and sometimes I feel like I just want to be like everybody else and like be able to talk to the moms at gymnastics and
You
like
can talk
relate.
to me.
I can't talk to you. Well, now I know. Like, we live so different, CeCe, right? We live so differently, and it's a good thing, and we're lights to the world. But
Courtney's
I
hardcore.
sometimes just
Yeah.
Everything she does hardcore.
Mhm.
yeah. Yeah.
Drinking
Well,
salads.
yeah, I mean, you don't realize it because I do complain. I'm not like I do complain, but I have, like, I call Kevin my lie samurai, because he's always like cutting through the lies for me. Because sometimes you just need that. And that's like the second pillar to what I would talk about, is like, the first is you got to arm yourself with healing stories. The second is you got to have an advocate or a partner or some
Mhm.
like-minded friends, people that you can, that are going to believe like you, because you do get weak. You do want to hit the easy button.
Mhm.
um, we 10 years ago, Kevin and myself, and it was the vision of our friend Susie Griswold. She wanted to have a holistic cancer conference 10 years ago. This is like 5 years after my healing, my diagnosis. Um, to create, like, just to meet together at a conference for like-minded community. And we called it the Healing Strong Holistic Cancer Conference and Retreat. And so it brought all these people from the holistic cancer world together for the first time in person.
Mm.
And after that, we ended up moving in the direction, instead of conferences, to groups. And so if you go to healingstrong.org, we've supported, I think, over 500 at this point, over 500 groups all around the United States and all around the world, of people meeting in their communities to talk about this stuff and to teach this stuff, to educate, empower, and equip people in your own community, because every community is different. Every community knows which holistic doctors exist, and which chiropractor will, whatever, and which holistic doctor will give you the ivermectin or whatever, the secrets are. And the
Don't show that.
I know, yeah, cut it, edit. But yeah, so what doctors will, support you, and then just come together in like-minded community. And you can go to healingstrong.org/groups, and you can put in your zip code, and you can find out if there's a Healing
Wow.
Strong group in your community. And it's just a group of people that I think usually once a month, meet together. There's some online groups too, if you don't have one in your area, and talk this stuff, in a way that's also backed with the faith aspect of, we
Mhm.
don't shy away, that our hope and our faith is in God, and he's the ultimate healer. And it's just so uplifting. And we're not all here forever, right? We all have, at some point, it's like the guarantee for everybody on earth today is we're not going to be here forever. But yet people act like somehow they're in control, and they can, if they obsess enough, they can keep themselves here forever, right?
Right.
And fear enough, and are afraid enough. And it's just like living with a group of people that live that way. Like, this is not my forever home. And then there's more to it. Yeah. Anyway,
That
that's Healing Strong. That's really the second part of what I think made my journey successful. Healing Strong didn't exist at the time, but what I learned through my journey was that we need an advocate or a support system or a group of like-minded people to be our, kind of to be our person
Yeah,
through our
especially when you get so pressured into one side. Like, I can't imagine the guilt you probably felt for a while, like, knowing that or following that Holy Spirit and listening to it. Because how many times do we not listen to it and go against, what we
Are
are
you sure?
actively
Are
being
you
told, right?
Yeah.
And
Are you
then, like, the guilt that you could feel going through that or the pressure from conventional doctors or from your family or just the guilt of maybe being like, "Okay, well, do I really is that really what I heard? Do I really listen to this? Do I really keep going forward, or should I be doing the conventional stuff too?" Like, that is a lot of pressure in such a
right?
sensitive time
Right.
of your life that community would make all the difference. So go back for us to the 3 months where you're like, "Okay, I can do this 3-month protocol. I'm drinking my salads," which I can't believe you just blended these up, but I'm drinking my salads,
Yeah.
I'm doing my cottage cheese.
64 ounces, 64 ounces, half a gallon. And sometimes twice a day until I got to the point where I could actually do like a smoothie for lunch. The Budwig mixture, the cottage cheese flaxseed oil for breakfast, the 64-ounce smoothie for lunch, and then at dinner I would just do a big cancer fighting salad. As I got down the road, I went to a place, and I don't think it exists anymore in Atlanta. I'm not sure. It's called the Living Foods Institute. It used to be down in the west side of the city. Actually, it was down in the south side of the city. Now it's on the west side of the city, but it was. I don't know if they're around anymore, but they taught like living foods principles,
Mhm.
how to sprout, how to chop your vegetables properly, like how to soak and ferment and make like Rejuvelac, like more of the Ann Wigmore protocol. They taught that there.
Wow.
How to do an enema. They didn't teach coffee enemas, but later on we learned that that was something a lot of people were doing. That was more on what we call the Gerson protocol. A lot of, and even like Chris Speak Cancer and his, and you guys, we'll have to put all this in the notes so people can find these
Yeah.
things. These are great resources. But like doing coffee enemas is something that people do. But I did water enemas, and not a ton, but I did during my 3 months, like let's say starting 3 months, like November, December, at the end, I think it was the middle, around this time, actually, middle of January of 2009, I went to the Living Foods Institute and I did 7 colonics over the course of 2 weeks. And there was so much garbage that came out of my
Mm,
body because up to that point, people were like, oh, eating all those vegetables and drinking those smoothies, you must have been just like super regular. And I was like, no, I was like bloated and I was gassy. And I was like, and there was just so much that from like whatever 26 years of eating a really crappy diet, I needed a reset. And so I did
mhm.
these 7 colonics. Maybe it was 6. No, I think it was 7 because we got these packages and Kevin came with me and we did it. It's quite an expense, right? Like
Yeah.
out of pocket, of course. And we went and we each got 6 colonics over the course of the 2 weeks that we were there. And he gave me one of his, so I had 7. That's I'm remembering this. He
What a
didn't want to do it.
husband.
What a
Yeah,
sacrifice.
it was just like,
Right.
and it yeah. Oh, right. It was, I mean, we gave each other enemas at like 3 months of marriage. We've been married like 3 months, and like we had to figure out how to stick an enema tube up our heinies. We didn't know what.
There's nothing like bonding. That's bonding.
No, and we were laughing the whole time. But
Have
goodness
for date night.
gracious, I don't normally share that, but that's just funny. Like
Well, you've
it's
shared
gross.
it now.
Yeah, and it's like we talked about it before, and it's a laugh, but for some people that's weird. Like, what? That's so weird. Maybe to our parents' generation, they would never be. I don't know. I don't know what they do, but it just seems like something that is, we're a little more open with our bodies, I guess, nowadays. But yeah, so that was part of that's kind of like the third thing that I did, as far as like, have uh be in like-minded community. What was my first one? I said, whatever I said the first thing. We're talking about, oh gosh, you guys, what was it?
Listen,
You have
don't
to cut
ask us.
this.
Our brains are mush.
Well, go back 30 minutes and
Listeners, go
whatever.
back 30 minutes ago.
Yeah, have yourself an advocate, and then of course there's the diet, and then detoxification. Just
Yeah.
like if you're having any problems like with your digestion, nowadays I wonder. Like I take some supplements that really do help, like move things through. In addition to a mostly plant-based diet, but the colonics really helped me then,
Yeah.
and doing a water enema once a day, and then like I said, a lot of people in the holistic cancer community do the coffee enemas because they detox the liver. Um,
Mhm.
but anyway, so that was in January. And something interesting about the Living Foods Institute is when we were there, they said, I want you off all animal proteins. And so for those 2 weeks, I went off of the Budwig protocol. I also they wanted us off everything except what they do there. And so I stopped. There's another thing I did. I was starting to drink Essiac tea, which is a detoxifying tea that was discovered by a Canadian nurse who worked among the Ojibwa Indian Native American tribe up in Canada and the northern U.S. And they have these herbs that combine. There's 4 basic herbs that she was having amazing success with healing very advanced cancer patients
Mhm.
using this tea in conjunction to some other things she was doing. But she credited the tea and wrote the recipe down, and it went kind of crazy. This is in probably the 1920s when, like, I don't know if you're familiar with like the Flexner report with, like, buckling down on the holistic
Mhm.
practitioners in the United States. It's when, like, basically naturopaths, homeopaths all went kaput because they said no. The Rockefellers and they all said we're going to license and accredit only people who are using these pharmaceuticals to treat medicine. And so all of the other stuff went, but this is a little bit before that I believe it's either before or just in conjunction around that time
Mhm.
that she developed Essiac tea and started, I don't know if she sold it or she just went around healing with it. But that recipe now, what I did to get it was, there's a company called Fluorescence and they sell it, and it's so expensive to get their bottles, like $60 a bottle, and you'll
Wow.
need a couple bottles a week. So you can actually also make your own, and I'll give you those notes later if you want to. But it's on my blog too. People
Very
just search
cool.
Essiac, Essiac, Essiac tea. So I was doing that, but at the Living Foods Institute, I stopped all those things because I was just doing like the raw food protocol that they were suggesting in order to get like the full benefit. Well, the lack of fat from the Budwig, because that's a huge amount of fat every day, and protein and all that, and just being raw vegan for 12 days actually had a negative effect
Mhm.
on me. And I didn't get my period. Like, everything was like, my cycle was all off. And I don't know what happened. I just, like, it was, things were spotty and weird. And at the end of, I believe it was at the end of February, I was like, I still don't know what's going on. Like, my period was still wonky. I was doing really well at that point. I actually, after the Living Foods Institute, I went back on the Budwig and I went back on the SEACT because those things had been working. I could touch this tumor, this lymph node here. This one was cut out. This
Mhm.
one I could touch. And it was almost completely gone.
Wow.
Um, and it's actually stayed away since. It's never come back. It's 15 years ago. And there's stuff in my side here. I'll get into what I did to sort of discover that I was indeed cancer free. But at the end of February that year, I still hadn't had my period.
Mm.
And I was like, what is going on? So I've never taken a pregnancy test in my life. And I went and bought one and I took it, and that stinker was positive.
That's a good reason not to have a period.
It is. Sure is.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know because now we know when she was born, and we know that I missed a period because of going raw vegan that week.
Yeah.
And then when it kicked back in, I just couldn't. I was trying to do like NFP and use natural family planning. Like, I was tracking my cycle, but when it went all wonky, I thought I got like a sense of where I was in my cycle. Anyway, I found out I was pregnant, and I was doing really well on my protocol, got horrible morning sickness, was so nervous during that time, really had to lean on my
Mhm.
faith, trust God. I knew he had me on the right path, and he was going to take care of me when I was like eating saltines and, almond butter and apples. Like, I couldn't get anything down. Um, and then I went to the oncologist in May, which was 6 months to the month, like to the day, May 4th. I started my protocol November 4th. And he's like, you're doing so great. I got the blood work done. Your blood work looks great. But they always told me that, even when
Mm.
I had cancer, like even when I was diagnosed, your blood work looks fine. But he told me, um, I mean, you're in clinical remission. There's no sign of evidence here. you're doing great here. There's no new flare-ups. So you're in clinical remission. So May 4th is 2009 is when I consider um, my remission day.
Wow.
We found out the next month on our 1 year anniversary, talk like a whirlwind first year of marriage. On our 1 year anniversary, we found out that we were having a girl, and then she was born in November of that year, unmedicated natural birth.
Yeah.
If we wouldn't have picked the right practitioner for that, I will say we would have ended up with a C-section, because like a lot of first births, it was extremely slow. There was a lot. She was 10 days overdue. Meconium presenting in the amniotic fluid. But we had a midwife. We had a good. They had a good culture in their office for just like a watch and wait culture. And anyway, but yeah, so that's that first year of
Wow.
our marriage and our cancer story and our
Wow.
birth of our child, so our first child. And it's just crazy because of that, that God knew he had to intersect us like very clearly, and he
Yeah.
went to Kevin, who has never had that happen in his life, and listened to it. And since then, that phrase, "this is not for you," we've shared the story dozens of times, podcasts or in person or whatever. And so many people have come to us to say, that's the
Yeah.
same voice that has come to me. One time we were listening to a stage 4 pancreatic cancer survivor. Her name is Ann Cooper, and Chris Wark from Chris Beat Cancer was interviewing her at the first Healing Strong conference, which I mentioned to you guys. And we were in the green room where he had his little, he does all these survivors videos because they help equip people to have the confidence, right?
Right.
And he must have over 100 survivor stories on his blog, chrisbeatcancer.com. And Kevin and I were, Kevin was kind of helping with the camera just to make sure it was on. Basically, it was a very simple camera. And we were watching this interview with Ann Cooper on the couch, and we're behind the camera. And at the very end of the interview, and it's since been taken off YouTube. We have it actually. We saved it before it got taken off. We screenshotted it and or whatever, screen recorded it. But you can't find it on YouTube anymore. But her name was Ann
Go
Cooper of
figure.
Stage 4. Yeah, I know. It's crazy. Also, my SERT informational video is also I just got kicked off too. So anyway, but we were standing behind the camera, and she said, Chris, one more thing. When I was the Holy Spirit came to me, and he said to me, "This is not for you." And I knew, God, I am not doing that, that harsh treatment, and I'm going to pursue you and follow you. And Kevin and I about fainted behind the camera because we had never heard, she said that exact phrase we had been saying
Wow.
for years. This is not for you. And I'm like, I still get chills. Like, anyway, so
Mm.
if you're anyone's listening and you hear this is not for you, or this is not the path for you, or whatever, there's different variations we've heard over the years. But Ann Cooper, it was like legit exact words.
Right.
So pretty cool. Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Kevin just turned around and he said, tell him about there's a show called The Chosen. That is the story of the followers of Jesus. It's very popular. A lot of
Yep.
people, if you're listening, you may have seen it. It's on Netflix. But in the very first episode we were watching, and she has a drinking problem. That's how they're portraying her in that show. Mary Magdalene. And that's just their interpretation of this, of in between the scriptures of what may have happened. And so she's going to drink, and the first time you see Jesus in that movie, he comes and he puts his hand on her hand, and he looks at her and he said, "This is not what I have for you," or something, or "This is not."
He said that's
Mm.
not for you.
He said, "That's not for you." That's what he says in that show. And Kevin and I were like, ah!
Oh my.
So we just wonder what's going on with that. Like, maybe he's shifting people's paths for healing and showing people the
Yeah.
way.
And
And
what's
it may
so
not be.
fascinating is it wasn't through you. It was through Kevin,
Yes, it was. And
and
it
that's
really
for a reason too.
cemented the leadership
Yeah.
really in our family. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, like and I gained mega respect for him. And even to this day, when he says, he tells me something, he has, not that he has authority over me, but he has street cred.
He's called to lead,
Like,
guide, and protect, and he did that in
yeah,
all of those ways
Exactly.
with
yeah,
asking you to trust that,
yes,
hey, this is what the Holy Spirit said, and we're going to follow that.
Exactly, as a household.
Yeah.
Oh, you
100%.
guys, it's so awesome. Yeah, it's
Oh,
beautiful.
amazing. So I'm so
Yeah.
curious, like, I mean, it's just it's amazing, and, like, part of that testament is the fact that you got pregnant on this journey and then had a child,
Mhm.
because even I mean, all of us sitting here know that pregnancy can be very autoimmune inducing, right? So a lot of times things can get worse. Some women feel much better, but a lot of times things get worse during pregnancy, or patients can kind of rebound postpartum into they were feeling so much better during pregnancy, and then they have the child and they rebound and get sick again. And it's such a testament for how you are caring for your body from A to Z that then were able to stay in remission. There was no kind of little flare up past, having her. That is a wild testament.
We didn't know how, like, we did in navigating from that point on, like the birth of our daughter, we knew we weren't, even if we had some flare up, we were going to push through the pregnancy like a cancer flare up. We're going to push through the pregnancy the best we could to get the baby to be born without any
Mhm.
stuff going into her, right? Um, it seemed like my body agreed with, like, the cancer behaved well when I was pregnant. It was just, it's strange. It's almost like my
Mhm.
body helped my situation. After she was born, we didn't know what would happen. I just stuck with my cancer diet, and I stuck with it with a passion. And that
Mm.
was really when I started becoming passionate about holistic cancer options, and giving, people when they're diagnosed, instead of rushing into treatment, give themselves 3 months to see what would happen when they change their diet and their lifestyle, all while monitoring carefully. And that's kind of
Mhm.
like the fourth pillar of, like, what I tell people. I don't call them pillars. That's just something I started saying. I'm like, what do you call them? The fourth thing I say to
I like
people
pillar. I
is
think
like,
pillar is good.
pillar. I'm just not that, I'm not that big of a deal or fancy. But yeah, just like the fourth principle, that's better, of is just, you know, don't rush into things. Pray, listen to God in your peaceful
Mhm.
place inside, and he will guide your steps. And
Yeah.
like in Kevin and my situation, we always said he drops the breadcrumbs. That's all we did. We followed breadcrumbs. I remember a little thing the week that we were like that, the wretched week of, like, between diagnosis and like them telling us all the things we had to do, and between making the decision to go holistic, there was probably a week.
Mhm.
um we went to Blockbuster Video to watch a movie, because it was 2008. We were at the very end of that era, and there was like nothing on the shelves. And he comes to me. He picked up this one movie that was this horror. I had read the book, and it's actually a really good book called P.S. I Love You, and it's about this
Oh,
husband
yeah.
who dies from cancer, but he leaves his wife all these letters to open every month, like for the first year that he's gone. It's just, I mean, it's a great book, but gosh, it's a sob story, and it's not something you read when you've had, been diagnosed with
High
cancer.
emotional week, right?
And so we went back to, I was like, no, I'm not watching that. We went back to Blockbuster to exchange the video. Yeah, he said I didn't know what it was about. Um, we went back to Blockbuster to exchange, and there was literally like nothing on the shelf except this one documentary from a holistic cancer survivor. I had never heard of her in my life. Her name is Chris Carr, called Crazy Sexy Cancer, and she wrote a documentary about cancer decisions and treatment. And she herself was diagnosed with stage 4, like a really rare, I think, kidney cancer, and in lung and liver, like it was all over. But she chose to go the holistic route and to monitor carefully. Can you believe this?
Mhm.
And that was
Mm.
like, it was like shining like the star on Jesus after he was born, like on the Blockbuster shelf, that this is what you're
Wow.
supposed to get tonight. Yeah, like little
Holy
breadcrumbs like
Spirit
that.
strikes again.
Right.
I say people pray and ask him to show you, because he will. He will. And you just
You just
give
have to
him
be
your
receptive to
life.
it. Yeah.
Yes, you got to be open, and he will show you, because he wants you to give him glory. He wants to be a part of it. And anyway, we brought that video home, and she ended up kind of living with cancer. I don't think she's been like 20 something years, and she's still alive, but she never got that clean scan that she was like obsessed about her first few years. And she
Mhm.
just decided, I'm going to live my life. It's stable. She makes sure it's stable. And of course, not all cancers behave that way, but some people do choose to just live their life and change their lifestyle. And and they don't know where it's going to lead, but they just take that next step and do the
Right.
next thing, follow the next breadcrumb. And so anyway,
Wow.
yeah, that was, yeah. So that was like that first year, just continuing to do what I was doing. And then the second year doing what I was doing while we were raising our daughter. I think that was the year my third year in remission. I started my blog and started kind of writing different, like, or maybe it was, yeah, about the third year. And then I just started getting more and more into this. And
Wow.
so yeah. And just, yeah, staying really strict on my diet, really strict, almost to the point where once I had, we had our second daughter in 2013, 3.5 years after our first, we actually had a miscarriage in between, which was, its own journey. We had
Oh.
uh, yeah, it was like a missed miscarriage. So I said,
Mhm.
let's do this naturally, and going more, I guess we're talking about pregnancy stuff now, but, um, it took 6 months for my body to recognize that that the baby, because it was a miscarriage, really was a blighted ovum. There was no baby in the sense
Wow.
of like, once it finally happened, there was nothing there. It was just encapsulated, um,
Cells, essentially.
stuff,
Yep.
tissue. And it really was like, the sack. Um, anyway, you guys, I don't know if you're going to cut this, but I
No,
kind of
we
went off.
won't, but I definitely want to dive into, like, all of your pregnancies and postpartum and
Mhm.
prenatal, like, all that stuff in kind of our second chat for sure, but going back, obviously, like, this whole experience dramatically transformed your lifestyle. So,
Yeah.
you touched on a little bit or a lot of it, and what I've kind of gathered is, like, is sorry, the dietary aspect has been the biggest staple that you've continued. Are there other
Mhm.
modalities that you continue to just do as kind of maintenance? You mentioned, like, earlier when you were still diagnosed, the colonics and the tea, and are there other modalities that you just use as kind of general wellness to maintain your health outside of the diet currently?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the one supplement, because there was like 76 pills I took every
Wow.
day there was a ton of supplements. And well, I can talk about a few of them, but the one I've stuck with is the beta 1 3D glucan.
Mm,
It's a specific company I buy it from called Better Way Health. It's the same company that I bought from 15 years ago.
wow.
They're here in Atlanta, actually. I love that they're here. They're local, and it's made locally in the South in South Carolina. But it's just an immune modulator supplement. It's been studied extensively for many years, and it basically acts by creating like more activity in your neutrophil cells, receptor sites, so that it can more easily recognize what's not supposed to be there. And so I took that. That was like the first supplement I remember buying, and it was,
Mhm.
expensive. And I'm like, this is getting real. We're buying like these. I mean, the amount of money that you spend on a holistic cancer journey
Oh,
is
yeah.
just really daunting because nothing's covered by insurance. um, yeah, it's wild. And of course, like a really great food-based multivitamin I was on, and these things I've stuck with over the years. Now I really don't take a ton of supplements anymore. I just try to focus on eating mostly plants. I try to drink a smoothie a day. I try to juice. I never
Mm,
juiced much on my protocol anyway. It was more of like the Budwig in the morning, the big giant 64-ounce green smoothie in the afternoon, and then the salad at night. So nowadays, I just really focus on just really whole foods nutrition. I did start eating animal proteins. I would say kind of increasing it gradually over after like the third year. And
mhm.
then I really stayed pretty hardcore on my cancer protocol for 5 years until I hit my 5 year remission point. And at that point, I actually had a test. It was called the Oncoblot at the time. It's a blood test, but it was developed to be sensitive to certain cancer markers, and it came back completely negative. So that was the
Ugh,
first time I ever had like an actual real test that I paid like $800 for
wow.
for them to tell me everything is great in your inner terrain. I never had a follow up scan. I couldn't while I was pregnant, and then after we delivered, I was like, I have no physical evidence of any tumor involvement. So I felt comfortable as long as I was feeling good and just
Mhm.
continuing what I was doing. And I never had a follow up scan. And
Wow.
some people need that in order to feel they're mentally okay. Like they just need to know.
They need to
But I
see the
just
negatives. Yeah.
yeah, they need to know. Yeah. They need to just be reassured, or otherwise they live in a state of anxiety of, or am I doing enough? Is it coming back? And I have had seasons where we could talk more about the postpartum or,
Mhm.
pregnancy, postpartum stuff later, but where I was mentally not okay with
Yeah.
because of postpartum issues mainly and overwhelm in motherhood, where I was so focused and obsessed with my health that it was unhealthy. And
Mhm.
I got to the point where it was a big, big journey between, with me and God, talking about trust and what my part was and what his part was.
Sure.
So
How does that in kind of general, how does that translate to how you choose to raise your kids and things that you choose to implement based on the journey that you've been through? Or like what does healthy living mean in the Campbell household? Like where's the balance? What are your like hard, this is
wow.
how what we're doing and we're lenient over here.
I honestly think that most of my decisions are they fall on a little bit I'm motivated by avoiding guilt, if I'm honest. Like I'm going to do everything I can to remove that my choice was is resulted in something that harmed my children. I'm just being honest.
Mhm.
It's not based on my knowledge. It's not based some of that I know better, so therefore I have to do better. And
Right.
sometimes you want to hit that easy button, right? Like I don't want to do this because it's but I'm motivated by I have to do this hard thing because if anything were to happen to them, I wouldn't be able to live with myself. Like
Yeah.
I hate, yeah, I'm just getting down to like the very like reptilian level of how my brain operates. Like I just don't um selfishly, it's not because it's what's best for them. It's that I couldn't handle if
Mhm.
anything were to. So I'm just being honest. But yes, I want what's best. And I guess that comes down to I want what's best for them. So it goes all the way back to like pregnancy. Did I do my best in pregnancy? Did I give
Mhm.
my body what it needed? Did I do what was best for the baby? Whether that be like I'm not going to take a Tylenol. I'm going to instead, get an ice pack and some peppermint oil or whatever and try to drink some green tea to get this headache to go away. Like I'm going to sit in this. And I will say my first and second pregnancy, I think I did like I had such horrible headaches that I did take a Tylenol in that pregnancy. And I just was like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? Like I was just so desperate. So to the
Yeah.
moms that like do those things, know that I'm not perfect either. Like I do things, but she turned out great. She's okay.
Perfect
And
healthy specimen.
I also have learned that like a little pharmaceutical sometimes, like over the counter stuff, that because you're in pain is not like sometimes you just got to do it and
Yeah.
it's okay.
Yeah.
It's like you
There's
can't
a time
obsess.
and a place.
Yeah, like I've reassured a couple people because they know how hardcore I used to be, and now I'm like, oh girl, take an ibuprofen. You don't want to sit for 3 days with that headache when you know that you can knock it out with two ibuprofens on day
Right.
one and move on with your life and get
Right.
some fresh air and sunshine and go exercise and do things that you would otherwise not be able to do because you're in pain with your ice pack and your essential oils or whatever. But yeah, so I would say like all the way back to pregnancy. Of course, no pharmaceutical intervention at birth or in the first. If you guys catch my drift, can we talk about that on here? Can we say that?
Mhm.
Just no. We did not choose to give any vaccines. I don't, I wrote a whole series on this on my blog on like sort of my mentality. I dealt in the same way I dealt with not using cancer, like pharmaceutical cancer treatment to treat my cancer. I dealt with a little bit of fear around like, what if I don't do this for my kids? And so I dug into research and I wrote all of that on my blog. If people just search vaccines, like there's a blog post for every single disease.
Mhm.
um, one day I'd love to make it into a book or of something, videos or something, just to be a little easy, more accessible. But yeah, I went through having to reassure myself. I wanted to be sure, just like with my cancer treatment. Like I said, with my cancer treatment, I'll give myself 3 months and then we'll reevaluate. Same with the vaccine decision. Like, let me just research this. We're going to delay for now. Like, so nothing has to be like these permanent decisions. Now we permanently delayed on both ends. We have so now I have a 14-year-old and she's just ridiculously healthy. The challenge right now is now they're old enough to sort of like their friends start talking about this. So
Mhm.
I'm like, I have to equip her to speak intelligently on that issue of like, yeah, we didn't, to teach her, this is why we don't, my parents didn't vaccinate, and we've never had an antibiotic. Like we have never had any pharmaceuticals, this is how we live. And my mom treats us at home, those kind of
Sure.
things that it's like, yeah, that's how we live.
So I
So
have a question. So
yeah.
because of my medical mystery overachiever and that my D dimer is high, did they test that in newborns before they give them vaccinations?
No.
So luckily I'm still alive, but that could have been an issue for me because I have a blood disorder. But they didn't test it before.
Yeah.
That's
No.
crazy.
No, they don't do that.
They're
Well,
just
well, I'm
like,
with
it's
you.
like a blanket here.
Yeah.
You get this. Everybody gets it. It's just
Yeah.
what we do. It's what we do. It's because that's what we're being paid for.
Well, equipping moms with that information is kind of a through line of everything that we do on this podcast. Hey, you can say no and make another choice and be well equipped to
Yeah.
have the information to say no, we're going to go down a different path. And I love that your story builds confidence in allowing to do that because you made the right choices for yourself and your family that have led to health and being in an environment that facilitates that in your own home.
What about the nutritional aspect? How big of a stickler are you in your household based on what you've been through with nutrition?
Yeah. So it's gotten tougher. I have had to relax my control
Yeah.
the older my kids have gotten and the further out from my cancer diagnosis, because even like with my husband, he is, he's a human. He's like, I'm kind of tired of eating this stuff all the time, or I don't really like that food that I know it's healthy and it contains all the amino acids that you need to be a complete protein and it's perfect for humans, whatever, quinoa. Like he like, he like, I'll say these things and it's just like, I just don't care. I don't care. And
Yeah.
some depending on who it is in my family, not everyone's motivated like I am to continue this way. But what I've had to try to teach them is when you guys put up fits or fuss or whatever, and we're talking, guys, like yesterday we had Brussels, we had like I made organic mashed potatoes from scratch in the Instant Pot. Like I cook from scratch almost every night, every meal, or every day, every meal. But we did do some like organic meatballs from Costco that
Yeah.
were prepackaged,
Yeah.
So like, because meat fills bellies. I'm just being honest.
Mhm.
Like if I were to give them a bunch of legume, like some lentils on the side, it doesn't quite have the same, satisfying effect as when
Yeah.
you say, here's some homemade organic turkey meatloaf made from organic salsa and organic oats and organic ketchup or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm not even perfect with that all the time. Sometimes we go to Chick-fil-A and I usually get the market salad. That's kind of my go-to, but I'll say, I really want a fry this time. Can we get a small fry on the side? Or babe, can I have a couple of your fries? Like that happens, but I'm
Yeah.
15 years out. I really was strict for 5 years. And with our family, we do our best. Probably our biggest, where Kevin and I bunk heads. What's the phrase?
Yeah, bump heads.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bump heads. Bunk
We
heads.
got you. Bonk sounded good too.
Same difference.
Bump heads is that he loves like ice cream and dessert, and I'm so anti-sugar, but he loves taking our kids out to get milkshakes or to
Yeah.
go. There's this place here in Atlanta called Allie's Cookies, and their cookies are all made from scratch. But I'm still who I am, and I'm like,
Mhm.
please, I just want to avoid sugar. Not only for the sugar, but for like the dietary effects, but for your teeth.
Yeah.
We have never really been to the dentist. Our kids have never had a cavity. Every time I speak in pride, something happens. So every time I say, our kids are never sick. We got the flu in December, like horrible. Five weeks. It was horrible. Everybody had their update from, we haven't had the flu in 6 years and we got it. It was horrible. But yeah, so knock on wood, but like we do, I speak about faith, but I'm knocking on wood, but you guys know how that is.
Yeah.
Sometimes
We got you. Yeah.
sometimes you just got to do it. There's something to that. But
It's balance. Like that's what I tell everybody that too, because it's It's just balance, and, like, I think the greatest thing that us personally as a family that we do is try to just teach our kids, like, not be restrictive in the sense that you can't have this, like, this is bad, you
Mhm,
can't have this,
mhm.
but more
Yes.
so, like, educational on, "Hey, well, you can have, this is we choose this for this reason, and like
Yeah,
empowering the
so
kid to
good.
understand what that reason is. And I'll even do it with certain supplements sometime. I'm like, okay, who knows what like omegas are good for? And Jack will be like, my belly. And I'm like, like, let's talk about this, and it's just
Something in your belly.
right. It's educational, and I think that's just the biggest part is them learning that it's not like a restriction, it's not like a naughty, you can't have this, but it's like, "Hey, if we can make a better option, let's make a better option." But life happens, and, like, have that milkshake. You're at that birthday party, have that cupcake, whatever it is. Like, does my soul go like this every time I'm watching? Yes.
You're like, choose the white icing."
Exactly, exactly. Why do we have to go with the bright pink? But it's such a balancing act, and I just feel like as long as we teach our kids, like, those core, basics of just those core basics that they will grow up and make much better decisions than most kids out there, you know?
Mhm. Yeah,
They
and your
will,
kid
and they're all and that's you got ooh, releasing that control is hard.
It is so
Like,
hard.
that's one of the reasons, like, I mean, homeschooling is really nice for this type of lifestyle because we do have more control. It's a little
Yeah,
more, but as our oldest is going to high school next year, and, anyway, it's just yeah, you just have to, like, kinda go, "Bob, okay,
I
we've
know.
done a really good job at home, so whatever you do out there, you'll be okay."
Yeah,
You were gonna say something, Anna Kate, I didn't.
Oh, no, well, I mean, I'm assuming because it's true for her kids, and I'm assuming it's true for your kids too, that when they make exploratory choices, that they can understand how it makes them feel after they
mhm.
eat it. So, like, Jack would not go and have a milkshake because he knows it's got milk in it.
He's gonna have massive diarrhea.
He does not feel good after he has milk.
Yes.
He
Yeah.
at 5, he can make that decision of, "Hey, no, I think I may pass for something else."
And they'll do that, like, they'll eat someone will give them something and they'll eat half of it, like, what five-year-old has when they're given something filled with sugar, has, like, the, control to just only eat part of it, but he'll stop and he'll realize he'll be like, "Mommy," like, we'll be at a birthday party and he'll be like, "Mommy, this is starting to hurt my stomach." I'm like, "Okay, dude, like, listen to your body, you know? I don't wanna knock you from having fun, but if that's your body telling you that it doesn't feel good, then you stop." And he'll pack it up,
Excellent.
throw it away, go play, you know?
I
And
love
he'll
it.
sit there and suck on a just the that's all.
Yeah,
I brought that's all little, fruit strips. Dude took 45 minutes to eat it.
yeah.
I mean, he'll just suck on it, and it's hilarious, but
And, like, to him, it's so much better than any candy you could give him.
yeah, it's
So,
good.
Oh,
it's
you know where one area that's been is with grandparents. CeCe, I don't know if
mm,
your mom's probably pretty on
no,
board with
my
this.
mom we're very blessed. My mom, like, follows my s I mean, she back when I was growing up, she was definitely way more on our side of things, like, she cooked every single meal. I never had fast food growing up. I saw like, my hair started falling out when I was 11 or something. I went to a Chinese medicine doctor. There was
Oh,
still
good.
things that
She's
she was not as strict with, but for that reason, I fully trust her with our kids, and she thinks I'm crazy because 'cause I'm way more strict than she was, but I'm like, the things back then didn't exist that they do now, you know? You
yeah,
didn't have to
they have to
worry about
understand.
genetically modified foods, 30 years ago. But no, we're
Yeah,
very blessed with her. The rest of the
yeah,
family,
that's great.
eh.
But she still gets
Most
to
of
be what do they call her?
Nana.
Nana. She still gets to be not and spoil them,
Oh,
enjoy the
totally.
fun things, and so that
Yeah,
they're not
and
missing
that's
out.
where I'm like, I've even had to tell Kevin at times because he can sometimes because depending on whose parent it is, like he'll be like, Mom, da 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 da. And I'm like, babe, we just need to let her be Nana. Like she can, So we've had that conversation around. Then there's sometimes, at least I've had an honest conversation with her that I've told her I will let you know when it gets to the point where I'm like, no. So like
Right.
she brought a big giant bag of Dum Dums like from school because she was a teacher, and and she left them here. Like while she was here, they were allowed to have one Dum Dum a day. Like she would give them
Yeah.
to,
Mhm.
and And then when she left, I threw the whole bag away.
I would do the same. Oh, absolutely.
And she was like, I wish you would have just told me because I could have brought them back and given them to my students. And I was just like,
Sorry, I
you know,
panicked.
I needed it out of my house.
That's
No,
totally
yeah.
something I would do.
Oh yeah, we flat out thrown entire cakes away that neighbors have brought us and things that just like we're not gonna eat this. I feel
Yeah.
so bad. One time I asked my Instagram, like, what would you do? And people were really passionate about like that is unkind to throw away the cake and like you
It's like,
should have
what do
just
you
taken
do
a
with it? You can't like
like,
donate a half-eaten cake, you know?
yeah,
Or
bring it to
someone
the firefighters. I'm like, the firefighters need to be healthy. They don't need to be
Okay,
eating cake.
this is my dilemma all the time, and my 7-year-old challenges me with this because, for, like, Halloween, we don't eat any of that candy. I still let them have candy, but it's, like, the Yum Earth, Unreal,
Mhm.
we swap it out, and then we monitor how often they get it after that.
Yeah.
But Ava's like, "Well, mommy, what are you gonna do with all this other candy?" And I'm like, "Well, we'll donate it. I don't wanna just throw it out." And she looked at me and she was like, "But if we don't wanna eat it, then why are we giving it to other people to eat?" And I'm like, "You know?"
Throw away the poison, Dr. CeCe.
So
Throw it away.
right, so this year we threw it out because I was like, "You know what?
I'm
I can't
joking. I'm
justify this."
totally joking because we've gone all the way. We've run the spectrum for Halloween from like nothing, no candy. We'll give you a toy when like our oldest was a baby. And that very first Halloween, she showed us because before we even could see what was happening, we look over and her name is Ruby Claire. So we dressed her as our kangaroo that year.
Cute.
She's a little
Oh.
kangaroo outfit and she's got chocolate. Oh, she got into something I don't know, a Kit Kat or something, and it was just all over her face. And anyway, we kind of had a good laugh, and we didn't let her have her candy. She was only one, and then we didn't do it. I don't think we let her have any candy. We substituted, and then we did that kind of stuff, and then now we're just like, all right. And I go through and I pick a lot of the pieces that have hydrogenated soybean oil in them. I'll pick them all out. I'm like, we're not eating
Yeah.
that. And then I'll let them keep there's like a few pieces and I'm like, that's not as bad. That's not as bad. But even I've got run all the way through, all the way to that where I thought that was bad. And then this year I just went, I looked at how much they had. We didn't do a ton of trick or treating this year because I guess it got cold or whatever. But I just let them eat their candy. And after day 3, I said, okay, it needs to be gone out of this house. And anyway,
Chucked it.
so we can all like, I understand.
Balance. Our advice is balance. And
Shame.
You
Yeah.
know, if I
No
I
shame.
did this year, I did a regular because we usually pair up with a couple of neighbors and set out at the end of our driveways, and so there was traditional stuff, and then I had a bag of allergen friendly, so I had all my Yum Earth and kind of all of that
Mhm.
stuff. So at the end of the night, I went home with a bag full of candy
We
that was
appreciate
candy
people like you.
that I could eat, and then so at the end of Christmas, so between after Christmas and before New Year, I went to Sprouts, and in the back they have like their clearance shelves.
Mhm.
I got the Christmas gummies, and then I got peppermint lollipops, which are their natural peppermint oil, and there's no dyes in them and that kind of stuff. So that's the peppermints that I have for this, and I got them on half off, so they were only
Oh,
like
there
That's
we go.
for all
Hey,
good.
things. So when I want something, that's what I go
amazing.
and choose. So
Well, we
That's
wanna
good.
dive into all things more pregnancy and mommyhood with you. But before we kinda wrap up this episode and move on to the next, where can our community follow you? Shout out to anything specifically. What guides do you have going out soon? Websites, your blog? Give us the details. We'll obviously include it in the show notes, but give it
Yeah.
to us all.
Okay. So my website blog is anticancermom.com. The best way I probably to just see everything that I've talked about. There's a get started button at the top. You can check that out and you can search in the search bar. I think it's on the right side. And then I have a guide that's $12. It's I think 65 pages. And it kind of goes through my cancer protocol and what I did and how use anti-cancer life. It's called the anti-cancer lifestyle guide. It doesn't show my whole protocol, but it gives you like a good starting point. I at some point I need to write out my whole protocol. It's kind of interspersed between podcast interviews and
Mhm.
things that you can usually find it. There is a How I Beat Cancer page also on there. It's right next to the Get Started button, and that does contain a lot of the links to the things that I used or what I did. And then healingstrong.org is where I told you to plug into community groups that are holistic healing supporting community groups. And then I'm on Instagram at Anti-Cancer Mom. I'm on Facebook at Anti-Cancer Mom. I'm most active on Instagram, which is usually if you wanted to write me anything, you can usually write me there, and I might get back to you. I might get back to you. I usually will at least tell you, I read your message. Thank you so much. I'll try to get, whatever. But
we're going to find out in our next episode why it may take her a minute to get back. But we're going to save that for the second part of the interview, because we're all dying.
I will always get back to people if their message doesn't get lost. That's not the thing. I'm like, Instagram is so weird. I love, and my email is Cortney at anticancermom.com. So you can also email me there, and that will give you an auto reply that gives you a lot of these resources as well. And then I always read my emails. And sometimes, especially if people email me with like, I have 3 questions and it's 1, 2, 3, that's so much easier than a big paragraph that I have to read through. So I'll tell people, just email me your 3 questions and I'll just voice text you back. And that's how I'll get back to people. So.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I'm so excited to dive into part 2. Y'all stay tuned as we continue this conversation with Miss Anti-Cancer Mom, Cortney Campbell. And until next time, let's discover together.
We hope you've enjoyed this journey of exploration and learning as much as we have. Before you go, we have a special request for you, our beloved discoverers. We'd be thrilled if you could show your support in a few easy steps. Step 1, if you're watching on YouTube, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to ring that notification bell so you never miss a moment of discovery. Step 2, if you're listening via Apple Podcasts, please take a moment to rate and review our show. Your feedback means the world to us and helps others discover our podcast too. Step 3, whether you're on YouTube or listening on your favorite podcast platform, please share the Discovery Doc podcast with your friends, family, and social networks. It's the best way to spread the joy of discovery. And finally, don't forget to follow us on social media. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at the Discovery Doc. Stay connected with us for updates, behind-the-scenes content, and so much more. Plus, for exclusive content and additional resources, be sure to check out our website at www.thediscoverydoc.com. And while you're there, if you have a burning question or a topic you'd like us to discuss on the show, simply let us know. Thank you, Discoverers, for being part of our incredible journey. Until next time, let's discover together. The content provided in this podcast provides general information and discussions on various topics related to health, wellness, and medical advancements. However, it is essential to understand that the content provided in this podcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. The host, guests, and contributors are individuals sharing their personal experiences, opinions, and knowledge in their respective fields. While they strive to provide accurate, up-to-date information, medical knowledge is constantly evolving, and the information presented in this podcast may not always reflect the most current research and medical guidelines. It is crucial to consult with a qualified healthcare professional or medical expert for specific medical concerns. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay seeking medical treatment based on the information presented in this podcast. The Discovery Doc podcast encourages listeners to use their own judgment and discretion while implementing any suggestions, recommendations, or lifestyle changes discussed in this episode. Each individual's medical situation is unique and may work for one, may not be suitable or safe for another. The podcast hosts, guests, and contributors are not liable for any direct, indirect, consequential, or incidental damages or harm that may arise from listening or acting upon the information provided in this podcast. Listeners are responsible for their own health decisions and should exercise caution and seek professional guidance when necessary. By listening to this podcast, you acknowledge that you have read, understood, and agreed to this medical disclaimer. If you have any questions or concerns about this medical disclaimer, please consult a qualified healthcare professional.